So it's the 7th of December and I'm off to Madeira, flying out on a Jet2 flight from Newcastle Airport at 9:25. This meant I got to the airport just in time to see the sunrise. Staying in a place called Mexico, a little north of Funchal Airport, supposedly named after one Robert Machin. He eloped from England in the 14th century, taking a boat to France, but got seriously blown off course and ended up in Madeira, where he and his beloved died shortly afterwards. Shortly after arrival, we climbed up a nearby hill called Pico do Facho, passing these aloe vera plants on the way and a few tethered goats. Hello, it's the 7th of December and I'm on Madeira on the top of what is in English called Beacon Peak or Torch Peak. I'm not sure what the Portuguese word is. It's quite a steep climb up into here. In fact, Madeira is surrounded by steep peaks, if that's the word. Lots of cactus around and red hot pokers. And it's pretty warm, much warmer than Newcastle, although frankly Newcastle can be a lot colder than it was when I got up this morning. But it's around 21 degrees today, little overcast but not too bad.
Hello, well hello, we're at Pico do Facho Hills.
We're coming down, intrepid mountaineers.
We're saying hello
Madeira
from
cake and a glass of wine.
And
Follow.
we're saying hello from Bill.
Hello, Richard.
I need to do my hair.
Right.
Yes.
Let's have a walk up past.
Anyway, I hope you like the musical interlude. Now, I don't know if you can see, but behind me is Funchal Airport, which apparently is in the top 10 most dangerous airports in the world. And it's quite a sharp angle, I can tell you, when you come into land. Then we all went on a short walk to Canical, which is a little further around the coast. And beyond that, in this photo, you can see Baía de Abra, where we went the following day. Then back to the hotel in Mexico for a meal and a good night's sleep. On this morning we were off to the far easternmost part of Madeira, around an area known as Baía d'Abra. Interestingly, Google Translate correctly identifies Baía to mean bay, but Baía d'Abra is translated as the Catalan for abra berry. As we set off on the walk, the weather wasn't particularly warm, a theme which continued for the rest of the day, alternating between hot sun and rain. Also, impressive as these craggy rocks are, there is a marked lack of vegetation, which surprised me. My guidebook showed a good deal more greenery, but perhaps it's been destroyed by fire, or we were just there at the wrong time of year. As you will no doubt guess, most of this rock, if not all, is volcanic in nature, including pumice and breccia. In this view, we must be looking more or less southwest, down the eastern side of the island, towards the airport. After a fair bit of climbing up and down and navigating along narrow ridges, one can eventually see a small house surrounded by palm trees in the distance. This turns out to be Casa do Sardina, which has a cafe and a very expensive toilet. Google Translate reckons the English version of this is sardine case. Not sure that's quite right. Beyond the cafe, the path climbs fairly steeply up to a peak which overlooks Ponta di São Lourenço, which is really the easternmost part of Madeira. However, you cannot reach this as there is a break in the peninsula. This goes by the name of Cais do Sardina, or as Google Translate puts it, Sardine Wharf. Yay, Google Translate, you got it right for once. We headed back via a slightly different route that eventually joined up with the outward path and walked our way back to the car park, where we got a taxi back to Machico. With Christmas only being a few weeks away, there were plenty of decorations and nativity scenes to be seen.
Here's the taxi.
What?
Silly well taxi.
Oh, bollocks. We took a short flight from Madeira to Porto Santo on Binter Airlines and stayed overnight at the Vila Baleira Resort, not to be confused with Vila Baleira, an area of Porto Santo some distance away. Vila Baleira just means Baleira village if you believe Google Translate. There's quite a decent beach just across the road, and if you look to your right you can see Ilho do Cal. Apparently, at one time, lime was mined there. We started off with a climb to the top of Pico Castello, slightly to the northeast of the centre of the island. On the way up, you can see views of the airport runway, which slices diagonally across most of the island, and beyond that, you can just make out the hotel. Apparently, Pico Castello was fortified in the 15th century and used as a retreat from raiding French and Algerian pirates. Not sure if the cannon's original. The higher you go, the more lush the vegetation becomes. Apparently this is largely due to one Regente Florestal Antonio Chiapa de Azevedo, and there's a bust of him at the top of Pico Castello. At this point, the weather took a turn for the worse. Some of us carried on up to the top of Pico do Facho, but others took the car to Pico Branco. Not long after leaving the car park, we rounded a corner and some fairly impressive rock formations appeared out of the mist. Further uphill, we came across masses of yellow flowers, and the mist also got much thicker. We climbed first to Terra Shun, or Terra Char as it's spelled, and then backtracked to Pico Branco. There are meant to be some good views of the sea from here, but we didn't really see much. However, we did find some picnic tables in a small building on the summit of Terra Shun.
Hello, it's Monday the 9th of December 2019 and I'm standing on the summit of Terra Cha, which is in the northeast of the island of Porto Santo, which is Madeira's little brother and a 25-minute flight from Funchal Airport. It's not the best of weather today, it's quite warm but it's very misty. And it's rather nice up here with all the fir trees and mosses and lots of little yellow flowers once you go above a certain height. But the view is not what it could be. But never mind. We also passed, what was the other one called? Pico Branco.
Oh yes.
Pico Branco is a little way that way. I don't know if we're going to go up that or...
It's only 0.2 of a K.
Okay, yeah, we'll probably go up that as well, which is a little taller than this. But with any luck, we won't get any more rain. But it's quite warm, so can't complain.
That's Pico Castello on the left, where we were the previous morning, and behind it is Pico do Faccio. On this day, we decided to stick to the western half of the island, at these basalt rock structures near the base of Pico de Ana Ferreira.
Alright, it is the 10th of December 2019 and today we are at Pico Ana Ferreira. This is a volcaniclastic rock formation. As the name suggests, it was formed by a volcano and is one of the top 10 sites to be found on Porto Santo. Hope you like it.
At this point we started an ascent of Pico de Ana Ferreira. Some followed the ridge from the left of this photograph to the peak. I went round the northwest side of the mountain and attempted to find a way up from there. Eventually, the members of the ridge walking party reached the summit. I attempted to reach the summit by walking through woods up to the northwest side and then clambering up some extremely smooth rocks to the ridge. However, when I reached the ridge, it turned out to be a knife edge with nothing on the far side of it. I couldn't see a way up, so retreated. Anyway, following that little escapade, we found our way over the valley to follow the ridge that leads to the peak known as Pico do Espigo, or Spike Peak in English. At the end of the ridge is this ray dome, which presumably has something to do with the airport and may also have connections with the military air base which is there. From there, it's a short walk to Ponta de Canavera, which gives views along the northern coast of Porto Santo. You can also see another small island, Ilho de Ferro. We then all found our way to a rather nicely situated cafe at Ponta de Calheta at the far southeast point of Porto Santo, overlooking Ilho da Cal. Eventually, we all walked back to the hotel along the beach. And that just left us with a little bit of repacking, a drive to the airport, hanging around ages waiting for the plane, and then a short flight back to Funchal, where we got a hire car and eventually found our way to our guest house on an insanely steep street. So back in Funchal, in a rather nice guest house. We had breakfast on the patio in the morning, which is nice. Not much hot water though, not so good. Having done that, we headed more or less straight uphill in the direction of Monte Palace, where they have the Giardino Tropico. Then we realised we're on the main toboggan route from Monte to Funchal, and we met some of the early customers coming down. I think the toboggans used to be used to transport fish and they just rode them back downhill afterwards. But I think it works better on cobbles than tarmac. Anyway, on to the Giardino Tropico. In the Monte Palace Museum, there's a collection of Zimbabwean sculpture. Here are some of my favourites. Then a little bit more wandering. And then it's hop on the cable car that takes you all the way down to the seafront. After being dropped off at the prom, I went for a walk through some of the narrower streets of Funchal. And so, after a decent meal, to bed. Today we decided to travel way above the clouds and do the walk from Pico do Arreiro to Pico Ruivo, the highest mountain on Madeira. And that's just the view from the car park. Pico de Arreiro is relatively easy. It's just a flight of stairs up from the car park. Finally, we had a rather decent meal at this restaurant before heading back to the guest house. Swimming pool at our B&B. Never used it, not once. Today I decided to go and visit the Museum of Sacred Art. It's fairly easy to get to, just walk down the hill. I hope you like religious art, because there's loads of it. After all that, I went to get some food from the local Spa supermarket and then ate my lunch beside a pond watching the lizards. These are Madeiran wall lizards. I know this because they're the only species of lizard on Madeira. After lunch, I spotted the MS Queen Victoria in port. Couldn't really miss it, to be honest. The MS Queen Victoria is the smallest of Cunard's cruise ships. There is also a statue of Christopher Columbus, complete with pigeon. Apparently he was last here in 1478, looking to buy sugar. Columbus, that is, not the pigeon. Nearby is Funchal Marina. Eventually I made it back to the Museum of Sacred Art, which stands on the same square as the Town Hall and the Church of St. John the Evangelist, which was my next port of call. From there, it's a short trip to the farmer's market, passing this rather impressive mural on the way. Those lamps appear to have real windows in them. Then all we have to do is find a decent restaurant, eat a meal and go back to the bed and breakfast. Well, that's about it. A fairly uneventful trip for me back to Newcastle Airport. Looks like it'll be the last time I travel abroad for a while, because at the moment it's the 11th of April 2020 and we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic and you can't get any transport anywhere and everyone's advised to stay at home, which is what I'm doing. As you can see, my hair is considerably longer than it was in the rest of that video. This is because I daren't risk actually visiting a barber's. I shall have to look into alternative hairdressing arrangements. Anyway, enough of my personal grooming, or lack of it. If you liked the video, subscribe, thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, thumbs down. Well, stay safe. Bye for now.